Paris, 1940. A spotlight cuts through cigarette smoke in the Folies Bergère. On stage, draped in diamonds and feathers, Josephine Baker moves to the rhythm of a jazz band. In the front row, a German officer leans forward, transfixed. What he doesn't know is that she's counting faces, counting insignia, counting who sits with whom. The curtain falls. Applause thunders through the hall. Baker takes her bow, and in that moment, beneath the silk of her gown, a camera no bigger than a lipstick tube presses against her ribs. The fall of France transformed Paris into a stage for a different kind of performance. While most celebrities fled or collaborated, Josephine Baker made a choice that would define the rest of her life. She would stay, she would smile, she would dance for the enemy, and she would betray them at every turn. Born in St. Louis, Missouri in 1906, Baker escaped poverty and racism to become the most famous black entertainer in Europe. By the 1930s, she was selling out theaters across the continent. Her face sold perfumes. Her image moved magazines. When war came, she was already a star. She was also French. In 1937, she'd taken citizenship. France had given her what America never could: dignity, opportunity, a home. When the Germans marched down the Champs-Élysées, she felt it as a personal invasion. The Deuxième Bureau, French military intelligence, felt it too. In September 1939, before the fall, they approached her. Would she consider helping her adopted country? Would she use her fame, her access, her charm? Baker didn't hesitate. The camera shows a close-up of her French identity papers, stamped and official. After the armistice, as the Vichy government collaborated and Paris fell under occupation, Baker's real work began. German officers loved spectacle. They loved being seen with celebrities, and they especially loved Josephine Baker. Invitations arrived daily. Embassy parties, military galas, private dinners with high-ranking officials. She accepted them all. Archival footage flickers across the screen. Nazi officers in dress uniforms, champagne glasses catching the light. Baker in an evening gown, laughing at something a German colonel just said. What they saw was a performer delighted by their attention. What she saw were documents left on desks, maps spread across tables after too much wine, conversations that turned indiscreet when men wanted to impress her. The cameras came from Jacques Abté, her handler in French intelligence. Some were built into powder compacts, others fit inside cigarette cases. The smallest one, barely larger than a matchbox, was sewn into the lining of her most glamorous gowns. A powder room in a German embassy, marble counters, ornate mirrors. Baker enters alone, checking beneath the stalls. Empty. She withdraws a compact, but instead of checking her makeup, she angles it toward documents left on a side table. Click, click, click. She returns it to her purse, freshens her lipstick, returns to the party. The whole operation takes 45 seconds. But photographs weren't enough. The intelligence needed to reach London, to reach de Gaulle's Free French forces. This meant crossing borders. This meant smuggling. Baker discovered something remarkable. Famous people weren't searched. Celebrity was its own kind of passport. She traveled constantly: Portugal, Spain, North Africa. Official reason? Entertaining troops, performing charity concerts. Actual reason? Carrying intelligence across enemy lines. Her method was ingenious. Sheet music. The papers she carried everywhere, the scores for her performances, were written in invisible ink. Developed properly, they revealed troop movements, supply routes, defense installations. Border guards would flip through them, bored. Just music, just another performer's props. A customs checkpoint in 1941. A German officer rifles through Baker's luggage, gowns, shoes, stacks of sheet music. He holds one up to the light, squinting at the musical notes. He hands it back. She smiles. He waves her through. By 1941, Baker had left occupied France entirely, relocating to North Africa. Morocco, nominally under Vichy control, but practically a crossroads of spies and intrigue. Here, her operations expanded. She performed for French colonial troops, keeping morale high, but she also cultivated relationships with Vichy officials, men who held secrets, men who could be manipulated, men who underestimated her because she was a woman, because she was black, because she was just an entertainer. And one of these men would give her the most important intelligence of her career. His name remains classified even now. The files refer to him only as the diplomat. He was married, he was vain, and he was desperately in love with Josephine Baker. She let him believe the feeling was mutual. Over dinners, over drinks, she listened. He talked. He wanted to impress her, wanted her to see him as important, connected, privy to great secrets.
In November 1942, he told her something he absolutely should not have told anyone. The Americans and British were planning a major conference. The location was being kept secret for security reasons. Churchill and Roosevelt would both attend. He knew where. Casablanca. Baker's face never changed. She touched his hand. She smiled. She said how wonderful it must be to know such important things. That night, she encoded the message and passed it to her handler. The intelligence reached Allied command months before the conference. Security preparations that would have been impossible in weeks became achievable in months. Additional troops deployed, surveillance intensified, potential threats were identified and neutralized. Historians still debate whether there were actual assassination plots against Churchill and Roosevelt at Casablanca. What's certain is that Baker's intelligence allowed Allied security to act as if there were. The conference proceeded. The two leaders met safely, and Baker kept dancing. But espionage takes a toll that victory medals don't capture. Every party was a performance, every flirtation calculated, every smile a lie. She lived in constant fear of exposure. One suspicious officer, one thorough search, one decoded message intercepted. The penalty for espionage was execution. She watched friends disappear, other resistance members less careful or less lucky. She attended their memorial services, if there were services at all. She kept performing. In 1943, she fell seriously ill, septicemia, possibly from a botched abortion, possibly from the chronic stress of living a double life. She spent 19 months in a Casablanca hospital, delirious with fever, hovering near death. Even then, she continued intelligence work. Her hospital room became a meeting place for resistance operatives. She received visitors, gathered information, passed it along. The nurses thought she was simply popular. By the time she recovered, the war had turned. Allied forces were advancing. France would soon be liberated. Baker returned to Paris in October 1944, entering the city with Free French forces. No longer a spy, now a symbol. Archival footage shows her in a French uniform, tears streaming down her face as she walks the streets of a free Paris. After the war, the French government struggled with how to acknowledge her service. Espionage operations were classified. Her network had operated in shadows by design. Public recognition meant exposing methods, compromising ongoing operations. But France found a way. In 1946, she was awarded the Croix de Guerre. In 1961, the Légion d'honneur. At the ceremony, she wore her old performing costume, the one with the hidden camera pocket. The officer pinning the medal paused when he felt it. Baker smiled. No words were necessary. She never spoke publicly about the specifics of her intelligence work. When journalists asked about the war, she deflected. "I did what any French person would do," she'd say. "I defended my home." But the files tell a different story. Declassified documents from French military intelligence reveal the scope of her network. 19 documented intelligence transfers, hundreds of photographs of classified documents, information that shaped Allied military planning across North Africa. And the Casablanca intelligence, which may have saved 2 of the war's most important leaders. OSS files, released decades later, show American intelligence knew about Baker's activities. They considered recruiting her directly, but decided against it, worried that American involvement might compromise her cover. Better to let the French run her. She was too valuable to risk. Josephine Baker died in 1975, 4 days after the premiere of a retrospective celebrating her 50 years in show business. She was 68 years old. At her funeral, French military officers in full dress uniform carried her casket. 20,000 people lined the streets of Paris. She was the first American-born woman to receive full French military honors at her burial. The cameras she used are preserved in French intelligence archives, still classified. The sheet music, developed and photographed, sits in climate-controlled storage. The names of her network remain mostly redacted. But her story refuses to stay hidden. Because Josephine Baker understood something profound about power and performance. The people who underestimated her, who saw only the costume, only the smile, only the spectacle, made themselves vulnerable. They thought they were watching a show. They were, just not the one they paid for. The real performance was convincing them she was harmless, that she was decoration, that a black woman, an entertainer, a dancer, couldn't possibly be a threat to the Third Reich. She let them believe it, and while they watched her dance, she was watching them. Every face, every insignia, every careless word after too much champagne, she remembered it all. A final image, Baker on stage, spotlight blazing, arms raised in triumph. The image freezes, then slowly, it's overlaid with a photograph from French military intelligence. The same woman, same pose, but now in a French officer's uniform, medals across her chest. 2 performances, 1 woman, both true. Fade to black.